What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another episode of Just Jets here on the channel and in audio form. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in today's show. We're going to go through my realistic expectations for this draft class. We'll go through each guy. We will answer your voicemails. You guys have a lot of feelings on the NFL draft, so we'll talk through all of that. But wanted to start today's episode taking a look at the class. You've seen my reactions at this point to each individual pick. We've started the prospect deep dives. By the time you're watching this, Arman Meu and Mason Taylor's has come out. And now really, I think what I wanted to do with this episode was kind of just go through player by the draft class and talk about what I think is realistic expectations for them this year and potentially down the line. So we'll get started. We'll go chronological, right? Arman Meu, first pick of the draft, number 7 overall. He, I think, easiest one to project. He is going to be a starting right tackle from day one. Now, I think there's a chance that there might be some ups and downs in year one because making the jump to the NFL from college is hard no matter how you slice it. And tackle is, I would say a challenging position to do that, for. But I think, he's a top 7 pick in the draft. I'm not going to get on here and wax poetic and say, for sure, he's going to be an elite level right tackle like Penei Sewell or Tristan Wirfs. I think that's just, unfortunately, way too lofty expectations. We're going realistic. And my genuine realistic expectation for Arman Meu is I think he's going to be pretty solid in year one, like a top 20 right tackle in the NFL. And I think he ends up settling in as someone who is an average to slightly above average right tackle in this league for a long time, which is great. And the Jets really need that because they have someone, at left tackle that they like, left guard, center, right guard. Going into it, they didn't have right tackle available. And my realistic expectation is a good caliber starting right tackle. And that, to me, that's a no-brainer win. And I get it at pick 7, you're like, oh, I want the all pro. And can he get to that level? Sure, of course. I'm not going to say, a few days after Meu got drafted that there's no shot that he's doing it. But again, I'm talking about what are fair and realistic expectations. If I came on here and said for every guy they're going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that's a little disingenuous, don't you think? So for me, my fair expectation, and one that I think is realistic that he hits pretty quickly, is that he's a good starter, an above average starter at right tackle. Now, Mason Taylor, I don't think has quite the ceiling that Arman Meu does. Like, Meu could be and am I walking this back? But I think Meu could be a top 10 right tackle eventually. And that would be a good plus starter for me. Mason Taylor, I don't know if he's ever going to be someone who puts up, 1,000 receiving yard seasons or is just an elite level blocker. But what I've gathered from Mason Taylor is that he's just good at a lot of things. He's not amazing at anything, one particular thing in particular, but I just think he's going to be a solid tight end for hopefully a long time on the New York Jets. Now, can he give you similar production to like what Dustin Keller did for the Jets, especially early in his career? Like, as a rookie in particular, expectations, I think he's going to start. There's no one else on this team that is of the caliber of Mason Taylor. Catch 40 to 45 passes for like 500 to 550 yards. Essentially give you Tyler Conklin numbers in, early on, and hopefully he progresses and eventually gets to a point where it's like, hey, you got an 800-yard, 10-touchdown season from Mason Taylor. Hell yeah, sign me up for that, right? But again, just looking at what I think is fair to expect from him in year one, probably somewhere around like 3rd on the team in receptions. I think Garrett Wilson will be 1. I think Breece Hall will be 2. I'm rocking the Breece Hall jersey today because I'm happy the Jets didn't trade him after the draft, or during the draft. So, and then after that, I think you're going to Mason Taylor, somewhere around, again, not a crazy high number. He's not going to have a Brock Bowers-like rookie season. He's not going to even have, who's the guy on Detroit, Laporta-like rookie season. I just think he's going to be decent tight end production, decent starting tight end production. Again, not this, 800 yards out of the right out of the gate, but a regular contributor, a good starter, decent player right away. That's my expectation for the top two guys. Now, we get into some of the later picks, and I do have expectations for some of these guys, but let's start with Azariah Thomas here, who obviously out of FSU, maybe the first surprise pick the New York Jets had, and not that, Thomas wasn't worthy of going earlier. I don't think he's going to start this year, and maybe that's where my initial reaction with the draft pick came from, because I was hoping the Jets would find guys, in each of their first three picks who come in and start right away. I have no idea what they're doing with Brandon Stephens. I wish I had a better answer for you, because I've gotten, asked, is Stephens going to go to safety? Is Thomas going to start? Is Stephens going to start at safety, at corner rather, and Thomas is going to move? I don't think they move Thomas. To me, I think he projects best as an outside corner, but guys get banged up. I think he plays as a role player this year, but it would not shock me at all if at some point next year he's starting. And I do think Thomas, even yes, as a third round pick, which doesn't happen often for the New York Jets, will eventually be a starter. I think Sauce and Thomas on the outside is their long-term plan. I know they gave a 3-year deal to Stephens. It's really closer to a 2-year deal, and they gave him decent money, which then just adds to the confusion of that signing, which we initially had in the first place. But I do think Thomas is talented enough to start. And what I like best about him in this scheme and in this role for the New York Jets is he's big and physical. And I think that's the style of defensive back they're looking for. Big, physical guy is going to be a pain in the ass to get off the line of scrimmage against. And like I said, maybe not this year, but it would not shock me at all if in 2026 we're looking at Thomas as a starter for this team outside opposite of Sauce Gardner. Again, that's not saying he's going to be on the shelf the entire season. That's not where my stance is. I think he's depth. I think he'll play in certain packages, and I think he'll flash a little bit because he's a good player. Now, we'll get to day 3, which was maybe the more head-scratching day for the New York Jets, starting with Arian Smith. Again, these are my expectations. The ceiling is hopefully higher on some of these guys. Smith, I think he will be a gunner and like the 5th or 6th receiver. And I think there'll be some plays, especially in the preseason, where, you get to the second half and you're taking guys out, and Arian Smith is going to have a long touchdown from, maybe Jordan Travis even, or someone, their 3rd or 4th camp arm. I think he is going to shine in those moments, and there'll be flashes over the summer. And it's like, oh, maybe they do have something here. Everyone was wrong about Arian Smith. But my guess would be mostly special teamer, maybe your 5th receiver if things break right. I don't have crazy high hopes for him. And again, like every single guy on this list, I want the Jets to be good. That's my first thing with this team. And as a fan, I want every single player that the Jets draft to be amazing. I'm not going to come on here, though, and tell you the opposite of how I feel about the player just because my favorite team drafted them. Now, if I'm down on a guy, I obviously hope that I'm wrong. It's happened before, and I've been plenty happy to be proven wrong. Great example of this, when the Jets brought in Quincy Williams, and for like the first year or so Quincy Williams was here, I was hard on him because the splash plays were there, but I thought there was too much inconsistencies with his game. Eventually becomes an all-pro linebacker and is a great value deal for the Jets. I'm happy that happened for Quincy Williams because the Jets are a significantly better team for it, right? But I have my doubts about Arian Smith. And my expectation, especially for this year, special teams role, back end of the roster wide receiver, which is a little rich for me in the 4th round. Thought he was a 6th or 7th round player that the Jets went a little bit early on. All right, let's do Malachi Moore next. I think this is a guy who might push to play earlier on than anticipated, because you look at the Jets safety room. Again, we have no idea what's happening with Steven, so maybe he eventually plays safety for this team. But it's Andre Sisco and a massive question mark, because is it Tony Adams? Is it Malachi Moore? Is it Brandon Stevens? What are they doing with the other safety spot? And Moore, I don't know if he has the speed necessarily to ever be an elite level player, but he's a smart football player. He was a leader on that Alabama defense for years, and I think he's going to have multiple uses. And I think Aaron Glenn is kind of like the perfect coach for Malachi Moore because he could use him in a bunch of different ways, like we saw him use his safeties in Detroit. So Moore, I'm going to say role player, but has a chance to be a starter. I don't know if he'll ever be elite level starter again, but not a liability when he's out there. This was my favorite day 3 pick by far. All right, 2 more, and then we'll get to your voicemails. Francisco Mauigoa, 5th round, pick 162. Special teamer, 3rd or 4th linebacker is my expectation for him. He's a little bit bigger, which I think helps the Jets because they are very small at linebacker. Quincy Williams is a smaller backer. They converted Jamie Sherwood from safety to linebacker, so he was already established as a smaller guy. He's put on weight to play the position, of course, but Mauigoa is bigger than that. I think best case scenario, Zaire Barnes replacement, Chaz Surratt replacement, good special teamer, 3rd or 4th linebacker on this team, which again, 5th round, try to build depth on this roster. Then there's Tyler Barron, and best for me, realistic expectation, moves Michael Clemens off the roster. Is that enough? That might be enough. We're like, okay, that was a success. You got Clemens out of here. I think he'll be like the 4th edge rusher. They probably need another one. And the good news is if you sign anyone in free agency after the draft, it doesn't impact the comp pick formula for next year. So the Jets were very particular about the players they were signing when free agency opened and up until the NFL draft. If they're going to add another body, I would think, potentially an edge rusher would make sense. You have Will McDonald, you have Jermaine Johnson, who's coming off an injury, but they probably need another guy. But if Tyler Barron is your 4th edge, really poor man's version of John Franklin Myers, rotation guy, I think that's kind of where I'm at. So obviously more expectation for the earlier guys. Membu, I think, plus starter right away. Mason Taylor, I think, solid. Azariah Thomas, I think, is eventually going to be a good player and eventually going to start. And then the day 3 of the day 3 bunch, I think Malachi Moore has the best chance to eventually be a starter. But I think he plays. I really do. So let me know your thoughts as well in the comments or on social media, what your realistic expectations are for each guy individually in this draft class. All right, let's get into your voicemails now. We'll get started with Max calling in from New Jersey. He has some thoughts on the NFL draft.
Hi, this is Max calling in from New Jersey, and here's my draft grade. So I really did like this draft. I think the Jets did a good job. So I like the Arman Meu pick. I originally the Jets. I wanted the Jets to get Matthew Golden. He's a very good wide receiver. But I'm not mad about the Jets getting Arman Meu. He's one of the best offensive tackles in the draft. And when was the last time the Jets had a complete offensive line? I've seen Instagram comments. People are complaining, "Oh my God, we need to take Tyler Warren." But I think when was the last time the Jets had a good offensive line? These people think, "Oh, it's enough right away because we need to take Tyler Warren." I'd rather grade as the season went on. I remember a couple of years ago I was on a call-in show and I said, "Oh my God, Jets FR right away because we didn't take JSN over Will McDonald," and I was wrong about that pick. I was wrong at the time. I thought Will McDonald was a bad pick, but now I think Will McDonald's a very good player for the Jets. The 42nd pick, Mason Taylor. I really like the pick. I think Mason Taylor is a good tight end, very productive in the NFL. And then the pick 73 is Azariah Thomas. I'll give that an A. I think he's a very good lockdown corner. He could be the second corner behind Sauce Gardner. The only pick I really didn't like was Aren Smith at 110.
Yeah,
I think he's a good receiver. I watched highlights of him, but my concern with Arian Smith is I feel like the Jets can't get a good mid-round receiver, and the Jets can't develop a mid-round receiver. There have been examples: Elijah Moore in 2021, Denzel Mims in 2020, Malachi Corley this past year wasn't a good wide receiver fit. I said it at the time. I didn't think Malachi Corley was a good selection. I wanted Brendan Rice. I wanted Brendan Rice, and then we had Ardarius Stewart in 2017, Chad Hansen, Stephen Hill. Malcolm Moore, a good player. What's your thoughts on this and go Jets?
Yeah, so I'm with you on Arian Smith. That was a really big head scratcher, in my opinion. I didn't understand that selection for the Jets where they did it. If they took him much later, I think that's maybe you feel a little bit better about it. Or if they doubled up on receiver and he was the second receiver they took, I think it makes a little bit more sense. As I said in my open, I think he's eventually a starter. I think you're definitely getting starters out of Membu and Taylor right away. And then Thomas, I think, has, the potential to start. So there was definitely some good. I think the first 2 days were really solid for the Jets. Just some questionable choices on day 3. And we'll obviously see how that turns out. Let's go to Brandon up next in Texas. He wants to talk about the potential of a wide receiver trade.
Hey, Matt, this is Brandon from McKinney, Texas. I was the guy that thought we were going to go ahead and get Trayvon Moore the all season. I also wanted Malcolm Kuntz, but that didn't work either. But I think after the draft, Texans, they drafted 2 great receivers. So I'm thinking we should just go ahead and trade for John Mechie. Why not give it a try? That's all I had. I was just wondering what you thought about that. Let's go ahead and trade for John Mechie. And yeah.
Thank you so much for the call.
Hey, Matt.
Started playing again. Thank you so much for the call. I'm not the biggest John Mechie fan, but I like where our head's at with the idea of trading for a wide receiver. The team that I would look at is the Green Bay Packers. They have added a ton at the wide receiver position in recent years, and relatively early too. So they finally use a first round pick with Matthew Golden, but here's a look at some of the guys that they've spent picks on. You have Romeo Doubs, 4th rounder in 22, Golden, 1st rounder in 25, Jalen Reed, 2nd rounder in 23, Savion Williams, 3rd rounder in 25, Christian Watson, 2nd rounder in 22, Dontavian Wicks, 5th rounder in 23. That's a lot of dudes. Romeo Doubs is the one that I think would interest me. Not that he's ever put up crazy numbers, but I think he's proven that he's like at least a professional level starting wide receiver. He had 600 yards and 4 touchdowns this past year in 13 games. Year prior, 674 and 8 touchdowns in all 17 games. I think he would be a better fit to me than John Mechie would. But again, I like that Brandon's going wide receiver still kind of a need after the draft. Can the Jets find someone who has a surplus and maybe, give up a, late day 3 pick in 2026 for a receiver? I think would definitely be a good roster building decision. Jake from Jersey.
Hey, what's up, Matt? Jake from Jersey. Just want to talk about the draft a bit. Drafts are over now. We're currently just drafting some, signing some undrafted free agents. But just want to say I'm happy. I was banging the table for Warren at 7, but I'm happy with Membu. I can't be mad at it. We completed the line at this point on paper has the potential to be very good. Mason Taylor, he wasn't my favorite, later round. I don't want to say later, just non-first round tight end. But after, doing more research and watching more tape, and he could be really good. So that'll be nice. But I actually want to talk about the undrafted free agent we just signed, which is running back Donovan Edwards.
Okay.
Big fan of him in college, and I'm actually really pumped on the signing. I don't know how he'll get on the field. He's going to have to beat somebody out, but I think he could honestly be a good running back, RB2. I mean, he's got such good height, too. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I wonder, if, through all NFL backfields, we have to have the biggest NFL backfield. I mean, everybody's 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2". It's crazy. But really excited about that signing. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more to come, but that's probably my favorite undrafted free agent signing. Let me know what yours is, man. Go Jets.
Yeah, thank you so much for the call. For me, my favorite UDFA, Caden Davis. kicker from Ole Miss. Now, I know what you're going to say. Really, a kicker? Well, I think he has the best chance to make the roster and have an immediate impact. Greg Zuerlein was not good enough last year. I'm sorry. He just flat out wasn't. And Davis was pretty good in college last year. He had a 57-yard field goal. He has pretty decent leg. I think he's going to compete for this job. I don't know if it's a guarantee that he gets it, but kicker was a real issue for the Jets last year. If Davis is good and he's able to fix it, that's an immediate home run for me. Running back choice is a good one too. That's exciting. I mean, he was a cover athlete of the college football video game, right? He was better in 2022, and then I think injured a little bit the last 2 years. So I wonder what he looks like at this point. But it doesn't hurt to add a guy like that too, and just see what he looks like over the summer. Okay, next one we'll go out to South Carolina. Jonathan's a little bit confused, so let's talk to Jonathan here.
Hey, Matt. Jonathan from South Carolina. I don't know if it's really a question or not, but I'm just confused. I'm highly confused. I mean, I love our pick in Mimbu. I like our pick in Mason Taylor. And the corner from Florida State, Thomas, I mean, I think he'll be a good player. I mean, he was a good value pick. I mean, he didn't run at the combine, and he ran not so well at his pro day. But I get Aaron Glenn's point on there's a difference between teach tape or, like field speed versus, you're just running at the combine. I think it's a good pick. I think he'll be a good player. I just don't. What's the plan here? Are we moving Brandon Stevens back to safety, something he hasn't played in 3 years? And then you're going to start this guy opposite of Sauce, who's going to get a lot of targets because you're not going to throw to Sauce's way a lot if you're the opposing team. I just don't understand the risk. And there were players on the board that positions of need. Like Jalen Noel was still there. Kevin Winston Jr. was still there. Jamari Caldwell was there. If it were me, I would have loved Jalen Noel, but I get it. First year head coach, he's a defensive guy. You want to give him, a top 100 pick on the defense, but why not go Kevin Winston Jr.? I mean, he probably would have been a late round 1, early round 2 pick had he been healthy. I guess you could probably say the same about Thomas. If he had ran, a 4.41 or something like that, he probably would have been early day 2. I'm just confused. And then round 4, I don't understand Arian Smith, especially when you have Ty Robinson and CJ West right there.
Yeah.
I don't understand not taking a defensive tackle at all. I mean, I like Malachi Moore. I've done some research on him, and I think, that's a good value pick, but I don't think he's going to be the dude, day one at strong safety, just walk on and just, be that guy. And then in round 5, I like Tyler Barron. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sure about this linebacker pick. I mean, Torrey Horton was on the board. I'm a big Torrey Horton guy. Also a guy, that was hurt. But, yeah, I'm just confused, looking for some insight. Regardless, these guys are now Jets players, so they got my love and support. But I hope Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn know what they're doing, because a very lackluster day 3. Thanks, Matt. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the call. I share your confusion on day 3, and so for full transparency, I'm with you on the Thomas pick. I'm not against it. I actually think the Jets got good value with the Thomas pick, so I'm not going to crush them over it. The point that I was making on the stream, and what, I don't know if bothered's the right word, but my concern was defensive tackle, safety, wide receiver. There are, players at each of those spots available that I really that I liked at that spot, and they go corner instead, and I'm going, all right, good player. What's the plan going to be to fill out the rest of the roster? They, in my opinion, reach on a receiver. Then they don't take a defensive lineman in a strong defensive line class. Now, I know they added some UDFAs, but I don't know. I share your confusion, Jonathan, because I think they hit out of the park the first 2 rounds. Third round, good player. You question the position, sure. And then you get to day 3, and I don't. Yeah, you got a wide receiver, and I let Malachi Moore excluded from that, but three head scratchers on day 3. All right, Peter from Hudson Valley, what do you got?
Matt O'Leary, thank you so much for taking my call.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Jerome, then Peter.
Well, this is Jerome from Savannah. You will undoubtedly be getting inundated by calls about the draft, but I wanted to be a bit more specific.
Sure.
Specifically with the pick of Arian Smith from Georgia. I called you the day of the draft, rather, and I had a rambling message for you. Just use this one instead, please. I'm sorry about that. I don't think this is going to be quite as bad a selection as everyone thinks. Yes, I have some skin in this game, admittedly, because I live in Savannah. I'm a big Georgia Bulldogs fan. Got to see Arian Smith play. Yes, there were concerns about his drops. I am totally willing to acknowledge that. The argument, however, is that the Jets should have, how could the Jets do this? They passed on Jalen Royals. Other teams did too. Every draft cycle, we see baffling picks made by teams. Insert Dallas Cowboys joke here.
Fair.
And, we don't know what these teams are evaluating, how they're evaluating. Maybe they really don't know what they're doing, and maybe we can, maybe there are instances where we are better at this from our living room couches than they are from there on the field. Those examples are exceedingly rare, and I would, I know it's a joke to say, the Jets obviously know something we don't, but I tend to think that until, this administration, AG and Mugi et al. Really proves their incompetence, I think we should give them some benefit of the doubt. I am rooting so hard for this kid as a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs. I see him in the same light, and people aren't going to like this, but I see him in the same light as Robbie Anderson, Derek Ward, who Vinny Testaverde had. Might have thrown Derek Ward 1 pass or 2 passes a game, but they were very impactful. Robbie Anderson was not a high-volume catcher. He was somebody who you would throw one or a couple of passes to on go routes, right? So let's just take a step back and see how this works out. Anyway, Matt, I think we had a pretty good draft overall. Hope everything is well. I will see you later.
Thank you for this perspective, Jerome. I really, genuinely, I appreciate the perspective. Someone that you watched a lot, and I hope that he turns into Robbie Anderson. I loved Robbie Anderson, the player. I really did. Deep threat, was a lot of fun. Had a lot of big catches in like 2017 and 18 with Sam Darnold, and then a little bit into 2019 too, if I'm not mistaken. But that'd be great if he actually is like Robbie Anderson, and just even if he has 500 yards, but catches 3 40+ yard touchdown passes this year. That's such a win. That is such a win. The drops scare the life out of me. They really, really do. I think at least if you're looking for a positive, he's going to give you some stuff on special teams. I have my doubts, but I really hope that I'm proven wrong. I really do. It would make me very happy if Aren Smith is a very good wide receiver. I hope I'll leave it at that. I hope he's Robbie Anderson on the field, because that would be an absolute steal. And Robbie was a UDFA, so who knows? How about now we'll go to Peter. Thank you again for the perspective there, Jerome.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter calling from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley.
How are you, sir?
Morning after the draft this weekend and all the undrafted free agent signings that have occurred. 14 guys there, 7 on the draft. It seems like a good overall amount of talent was added back to the roster. I watched most of your guys stream with Ryan and Green Bean over the 3-day period, at least until the Jets picks were made, especially on Saturday, considering the rainy weather. I was home during the afternoon, so it was good to get those reactions going forward. I think your best reactions overall was Mason Taylor, which I was very happy about as well. I'm happy about the draft overall, yes, I think there's a lot of people are going to be critical of the Arian Smith pick in the 4th round, but at that point, he was probably the highest rated speed wide receiver they had left on their board because Kyle Williams had just come off the board, Dante Thornton off the board. So then they wanted a speedster, so they had to pick him. I'm not upset with, that being the case. I just kind of wish it really had been later in the draft considering where his ranking was overall. But I think they also got some good guys in the undrafted free agent group. The interior offensive linemen both looked decent. Obviously, the 2 guys in the secondary, the Clarks, Dean and Jordan. Jordan being the son of Ryan Clark. They may be contributors, if not on, practice squad, maybe on the tail end of the roster. So I'm going to keep an open mind until we see these guys on the field and see what exactly happens. That's the way I have to look at it. So they obviously have a plan, and these are the guys that fit their plan best, and that's how they want to execute it. So I'm going to keep an open mind considering it's a brand new regime. That being said, now that the draft and all that is over, do you think they will turn back to the free agent market and bring anyone else in? Obviously, the secondary has some questions as to whether, A.Z. Thomas will wind up starting and then Stevens will be safety, or Stevens will start and A.Z. Thomas will be the first corner off the bench if something happens. And then who's your strong safety? Is it going to be Malachi Moore, or is someone else, like maybe Julian Blackman, going to be brought in at this point? So that's my main question for this week. And are there anyone else you think they could conceivably bring in? I know they want to stay with youth and younger, group overall, so that's probably where they'll stay. I was also glad to see that at the end of the undrafted free agents, they did bring in Caden Davis, a kicker, so some good competition there. And besides that question about any other free agents they may bring in, I think you mentioned during the stream it was your birthday last Monday, so happy belated 30th. And as always, go Jets.
I appreciate that, Peter. Thank you very much for the kind wishes. Julian Blackman's a good name. Another potential edge rusher. What's his name? Smith is available. The edge rusher. Is it Ardarius Smith? No. Why is that name coming to mind? Zadarius Smith, not Ardarius. Zadarius Smith might be an interesting one. He spent some time in Detroit last year too. Had 9 sacks a year ago and is still kind of kicking around. Might be worth it at this point. Here's my theory on the Arian Smith pick. I think the Jets wanted Kyle Williams in the 3rd round. I thought that was the player that they were really looking to target. And he ended up going to the New England Patriots before the Jets got on the board. Now, 5th pick in the 3rd round. The Jets had the 8th pick in the 3rd round. Now this is just rumblings, so don't take any of this with definitively. But I think the Jets would have taken Kyle Williams, and then we saw them move around a lot on day 3. I think they would have traded up back into the 3rd round to get Thomas. And once Kyle Williams came off the board, they go, all right, we'll take Azariah Thomas here in the 3rd round, 73 overall. But I think their plan A was Kyle Williams and then move up for Thomas. And once that wasn't an option, they go, okay, we'll take Thomas and then, we'll take Arian Smith tomorrow. And they didn't want to wait to see if some other team would potentially take him early. They just used their 1st pick in the 4th round to get the only other speedster that they really showed a lot of interest in. Smith and Williams are both really the speedy guys in this draft that the Jets have kind of been linked to. So I'm not justifying it, honestly, because I do think it was a reach, but I'm trying to explain the logic behind it, and I think that's maybe where the reasoning behind why they went that route. We'll close with PG from Long Island.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. Thank you as always for taking my call. A couple of thoughts on the Jets draft here. Number one, the pick that has everyone kind of scratching their head, Arian Smith. listen, I get it. I hope he's not the Jets version of Frederick Weiss. But here's the thing. The Jets have a lot more information on these players than we have. They also have a lot more expertise, certainly, than what I have. And they were, he was clearly the top receiver on board when they made the selection. So, new regime, I'm going to trust them and hope for the best. And I think they have him as think that he could be a 3 or 4 receiver on the team. So, again, we just have to play it out and hope for the best. Second thing is, I was glad to see Muji trade up and target a couple guys and see guys that they wanted and make some trades to go get them. I think back to the John Idzik, the Idzik 12, where he didn't make a move, sat on his hands, wearing his diapers, and just 12 picks, and he doesn't see anybody that he wants to move up for. I never understood that. That's why he's not here. But it was good to see, Muji actually make some moves. Last thing I want to say is, obviously, you didn't draft a defensive lineman. A couple of things. Maybe they feel that they're happy with what they have. Maybe Taylor the third, they have hopes on. They did take that guy from Kansas City. And maybe, as I mentioned previously, free agency is still alive. No longer the compensatory pick equation. So maybe they target a couple guys. I mean, Fatukasi, who we had, is out there. So my question is, Matt, what position do you think the Jets might target in free agency to kind of bolster the roster? I know you haven't had a lot of time to think about it. And any particular players out there? I know there's a couple of receivers, a couple other positions. Any thoughts on who we might go after? Anyway, Matt, as always, go Jets.
Yeah, good points on the players that the Jets drafted and maybe their thought process behind why they did or didn't go for certain guys or positions. Edge, interior defensive line, safety, wide receiver. Those are the positions that stand out to me. Wide receiver via trade. I mentioned Romeo Doubs. I mentioned Azariah Smith. Julian Blackman might make sense. Those are some of the initial names. There might be cut candidates as well, over the next few months. So the roster is not completely done. We've seen them add guys at this point before. I'm sure they'll do it again. But happy to kind of just go through and talk about this draft class that the Jets had and what I think are realistic expectations for these guys and what we should be looking for in year one. So thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of Just Jets. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.